Thank you to the VRIC for having me moderate the final panel of this incredible conference. So we have Brent Cook on the panel, editor of Exploration Insights, David Morgan, editor of the Morgan Report, Nick Hodge of the Outsider Club, and Peter Spina of GoldSeek. Thank you so much for joining us. So I always look forward to this conference because I really feel it sets a baseline for the year. So before we dive into things here, I think it would be good to start and see where you guys are at, what your sentiment is right now in the mining space. Nick, you want to start us off?
Yeah, it's not extremely positive. I'm carrying over my sentiments from late 2018, which was, I've been calling an abysmal year. Some very high quality companies that I've owned and financed over the past couple of years that have good teams and good managements were thrown out with the bathwater during the end of the year with tax loss selling in November and December. We haven't seen gold be able to punch through 1,300 with any sort of strength. The spot price of uranium has seemingly been stuck at $28.88 for weeks and weeks and weeks. It might be at $29 now, but no, I'm not seeing the improved sentiment that we need to see to buoy these equities, and quite frankly, that's okay because it gives us time to do our research and diligence and come to conferences like this and find the real quality teams and assets that are undervalued. And my last point would be that we're avoiding disappointment by not getting ourselves too excited.
Okay. Peter?
Well, it's nice to see the focus back on precious metals opposed to crypto. Last year was too much focus on crypto.
You're here.
Yeah. It's been difficult for me to be a buyer of precious metal stocks last year, but in the last several weeks I have been buying and accumulating, so this is a good conference to meet with various companies. So I'm in the same process. Like you said, it's kind of the yearly reset the portfolio, look ahead and see what you want to invest in the coming year. The sentiment seems to be, it's not great, but it's also, I've seen worse conferences in the last year, so it seems like there is interest, and I think there's good reasons to be interested in the coming year. There's some big shifts on the macro level, so I think it's a good time to be taking a look at precious metals right now.
Well, last year was certainly a tough year. This year, Joe and I are not terribly positive on the outlook for base metals. I think the global economy is slowing. Markets are rolling over. What it really comes down to in terms of sentiment is it's all about gold, and gold is reciprocal to the U.S. dollar. In my view, the U.S. dollar, confidence in the U.S. dollar is waning, and I think with the president we've got, it'll continue to wane. So our bet this year is going to be more on precious metals, and in particular, early stage discoveries. That's where the real money's going to be made, because that's what is desperately needed out there. You see these mega mergers going on. That's all about them, to a large degree, not being able to replace what they're mining with new deposits.
David?
And I pretty much agree with Brent. I think there's always money to be made. My favorite junior explorer in the silver side is doubled in price this year and tripled its land position, so that's not too bad. Kirkland Lake has been kicking it for us, and we had that as our highest rated mid-tier the whole time up. So you can't make money in the sector, but it's been tough. I think the sentiment has gotten about as low as it's going to get, and I'm looking forward to a better year this year.
We're going to get to some names in a bit. Just to continue on this theme, and Brett, I'm going to ask you this question because I got a lot of feedback, especially after I interview you. Well, Brett Cook's so bearish, and shouldn't you be more bullish if you're covering the sector, especially if you have a newsletter?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I should try that. I'm not bearish on the sector per se, and I come across as being bearish, not on purpose, but what we're looking at is exploration stage stories. We're looking for discoveries, and the reality is it is really tough to find a new economic deposit. I mean, gold doesn't sell for, $12.90 because it's easy to find. So I would say I'm more realistic and critical when looking at projects, looking at companies, and what the potential of those prospects are. And that's what we do. We went to 33 countries last year, projects, I should say, Joe and I, just looking for the few that might make it. So I'm really positive on the potential for discovery, but the reality is you've got to look at these realistically and make a decision. Is this going to work, and is this going to increase the share price? So I'm actually a pretty positive guy.
I think you are. I'm just telling you the feedback I get. So Nick, just on your thoughts, you said you're feeling bearish. So what would it take for you to turn bullish? What do you need to see happen?
Well, with gold specifically, I mean, I think we need to maintain 1,300 for a bit and then maintain 1,350. I think at 1,350, I get really excited if we get there and we maintain it. On the uranium side, because that's what I mentioned in my first answer, we're waiting for the utilities to come back in. All the other pieces there, I believe, have fallen into place. The Kazakhs have cut, Cameco has cut. Physical funds have been created. The world continues to build nuclear reactors. The underfeeding has come off a bit, and we're just waiting for the utilities. So there's some key pieces just waiting to fall into place that would get me excited. But also, like I said in my first answer, if we can continue to give my top picks funds, capital, to keep them capitalized and allow them to advance their assets that we know are going to be valued higher when we get this bull market, then I'm content to do that.
So how can we make money in 2019? Where is it at? Peter?
Where is it at? Well, I like the producers. I'm taking a little less risk by going to some of the producers that have a few 100,000 ounces or more, ones with larger reserves. I've been looking at Golden Star for some time. They've been increasing production. They'll be going kind of building into their production capacity in the coming quarter. They got a huge investment from La Mancha, which has erased their debt and put them in a very good position. And you look around at the mergers and acquisitions out there, so you're looking, what are the next potential buyout targets? So it's an exploration side is very difficult right now. It's an area I like to invest in, but I'm not a geologist, so I rely on others to help do that research. But as far as producers goes, it's pretty easy to see there's some value out there. The question is, what are the metal prices going to do? So I think there's a trading range that could develop here for this year. Gold may not break out, so there's potential to ride some of those waves up and down. But I think gold is setting itself up for a big move, and eventually silver will make its big move. And a lot of those silver-focused companies are really cheap. No one really cares about silver right now, and the valuations are really low. But it's really a question of timing on those companies if you are going to do well. But that's what I'm buying recently, is starting to increase exposure to silver companies, and I believe the downside risks now are really quite limited.
Any other thoughts to add?
Same question, where's the money been made?
Where's the money? Yeah.
I think there's two ways that at least on the exploration side, that we can make money. The first is there's a real appetite for what appears to be a new discovery, a good drill hole, and by and large, a lot of these stocks are just ramping up. They're doubling, tripling, and continuing to rise. There's money to be made in that trade if you can find, and if there is one, find that fatal flaw before the crowd and get out. There's money made on a failure if you do your due diligence. Secondly, a lot of the companies out here are run by solid management, honest people, and I think now is a good time to be putting money into much longer term ideas. I'll give you one that we've owned, and long story behind it, but Evrim Resources now has got an enterprise value of, I think, about 13 to 17 million, with $11 million, that's with the 11 million bucks in the bank. Good solid team doing good work, but the reality is it takes years to make a discovery normally. It's not something that happens overnight, but if you invest in the right guys who understand what they're looking for, can contain their capital structure, and spend their money wisely and raise money when they need to, or when they have that opportunity, that's a long-term bet that I think is going to do well, looking out 2, 3, 5 years down the road.
Well, on that note, Brent, obviously, and all the panelists here, you kind of can sift through the noise and know who to trust and know the projects to pick, right? But for someone who's new to the space and you hear all the promotion and everyone's got the next big project, and I know I've spoken about this topic with many of you, but how do you kind of sift through the noise? What's the process you go through to figure out, okay, this is a real project here?
I rely on a network. Like Peter mentioned, he's not a geologist, and neither am I, but I have people that I can call on to sort of vet a project or say, hey, put a set of eyes on this for me. Do you know this project? Has it been around before? A lot of times we see recycled projects coming around again and again with different management teams, and if you're new to the space or you haven't been around that long, you can get sucked into a project that has been a failure multiple times before. And again, going back to the network, to vet the people, or have these people done honest things before? Have they treated shareholders well before? Have they done the things that they were going to said they were going to do in previous deals? And can they operate in the place they're trying to operate now? And then looking at share structure, how did they put the structure of the company together? Did they structure it in a way that allows for future growth and allows to make mistakes? And what I mean by that is not a lot of warrant overhangs, not a lot of what I would call loose share structures. That doesn't allow you to make mistakes. You end up having to roll the stock back. So it always comes back to share structure and people for me. And if you can vet the people and the way the deal was put together, I think you'll go a long way in avoiding mistakes.
Peter, what's your, how do you try and pick winners here?
Well, like just said by Nick, having a good network is helpful. I always ask around on projects when I find a company that looks well structured. So I'm the same way. I start off by looking at management, the history of them, then looking at share structure, see how they're financed, and you can tell a lot really quickly if it's worth it. When a company's got hundreds of millions of shares and they're at 5 cents a share trying to advance a project, you're just going to get diluted as a shareholder. So there's certain things you can do to start weeding out some of the potential investments, and then when it gets down to the technical side, I go and ask my network what they think.
Right.
I think you've hit on a key question, and for people in the crowd, mining and exploration are very complex businesses. It's not something we go look at a balance sheet and make an assessment and say, yes, this is good or bad, or there's free cash flow to that. There's geology, there's rock mechanics, there's social, environmental issues, there's metallurgy, there's CapEx, there's how you're going to grind the rock, et cetera, et cetera. So in honesty, I think it is really helpful to have someone that you trust and can go to. I would recommend my newsletter, but there's other ways, there's other places to go as well. But you need really, I think you need some advice, someone to help you screen through the noise. That's really what it comes down to.
How many newsletters out there do you think are solid, Brent? That are the real deal? Newsletter writers out there.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's it?
Read their disclaimer.
David, any thoughts to add there?
One is the M&A, whoever said it, I agree with that. We'll be reporting on, we think the most likely M&A candidates are in the next issue of the Morgan Report. We did that about 3 years ago, and I think we hit 3, so it's probably as good as most. I look for breakthroughs, try always thinking outside the box. One of the biggest bugaboos about the silver market, if you're as old as I am, and very few are, but as always, we're running this deficit, silver's going to go to the moon. And if you look at Jerome Smith's work, my predecessor, he looked at like $100 silver by 1995 or something. Well, what he missed, it took me a while to read the book, about several of his books, but was he made a presupposition or assumption that the most we could mine was by about 365 million ounces on an annual basis, and that was true for decade after decade. But there was a technological breakthrough, and that increased production substantially. So I never forgot that lesson. So in the Morgan Report, we have a breakthrough technology on the chemistry side that no one else is covering, which is a little surprising. But I've been talking about it for a while. The stock has gotten, my people were able to get in around 30 to 40 cents. I think it's around 80 today. My insiders on the mastermind got it at 25 cents on the financing, and it's been as high as $2. I think this story is going to get out. Somebody's going to pay attention because it is a technological breakthrough on the chemical side, and it's imperative that we do the best we can environmentally in the mining industry. So that would be my thoughts, and I'm glad that I have my neck out again.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up question, I guess, Brent, this one's for you, is I know we've talked about grade smearing in the past. Do you think it's more prominent than we think, and how can you figure
Grade
out
smearing, that's where a company will drill a hole and have a couple of meters of really high grade surrounded by not much grade at all, and they'll take that high grade and smear it across a much longer interval. It's a problem, but it's not a big problem. I see it happen, maybe once or twice a month. I'll catch it in a news release. And it's not that big a problem, but it does happen. And the problem with it is it's kind of misleading. It makes you believe that there's a much bigger interval of mineralization than there actually might be. And there's actually a tool we put together, myself and Corebox, called the drill hole calculator. And you can go there, it's on the internet, plug in the results, the from to and the higher grade, including higher grade, and it'll give you what the remaining of the hole carried. That's a real useful tool anyone can use. I use it all the time.